Welcome again to Math 800 Pre-Algebra. Today we are doing section 5.3, adding and subtracting signed decimal numbers. Our objectives: 1 is to add and subtract positive decimals, and 2 is to add and subtract negative decimals. To add and subtract decimal numbers, first write the numbers in columns with the decimal points lined up. The reason we do this is that when we're adding and subtracting, we want to add like place values. You want to add the ones with the ones, tens with the tens, hundreds with the hundreds, and so on. This is also true for the decimal places. You want to add the tenths place with the tenths place, the hundredths place with the hundredths place, and so on. The easiest way to do this, to make sure that all of your place values are lined up, is to line up the decimal points. The decimal points are lined up, all of your place values will be in line. If needed, you can write in zeros at the end of a number so that you have the same amount of decimal places. This step is not required, but it is extremely helpful. And then lastly, your final answer, the decimal point, will be in the same spot as it was when it was all lined up. So basically, once you line up the decimal points, you can ignore the decimal point and just put it in your answer. Our first example: find the sum of 16.92 and 48.34. We want to start by lining up the place values, and the easiest way to do that is to line up the decimal points. Now we can see the tens are in the same column, the ones are in the same column, tenths are in the same column, and the hundredths are in the same column. Now we're simply going to add like normal. We get 65.26. Notice we had some carrying or regrouping. 9 plus 3 is 12. That 12 goes into the next place value. 1 plus 6 plus 8 is 15. That 1 goes into the next place value. And we wind up with 65.26. The decimal point stays exactly where it was. It was in between the ones place and the tens place, so it's still there. Our final answer is 65.26. In most cases, it's very helpful to estimate the sum first using front-end rounding before you find the exact answer. This is very important because a lot of students get the decimal point screwed up. And if you have a rough idea what your answer should be, you will catch some silly mistakes about having the decimal point in the wrong place. So to estimate, we're going to round 194.2 to 200 and 6.825 to 7. Now our estimate says it should be close to 207. When we actually add, and again notice how we filled in these zeros here so that we had three decimal places. We have 0 plus 5 is 5, 0 plus 2 is 2, 2 plus 8 is 10, we carried the 1. 1 plus 4 is 5, plus 6 is 11, carry the 1. 1 plus 9 is 10, carry the 1 and 2. So our estimate was 207, our exact is 201.025. This is extremely close when we're rounding with decimals. And again, the idea is to have a general feel what kind of number you should have. We should be definitely in the hundreds place, we should be around 200, which is what our answer is. Subtract negative 1.861 and, we're going to subtract. You have negative 1.861 minus 7.3. We're going to use front-end rounding to estimate and then find the exact answer. Our estimate is negative 2 plus a negative 7 or negative 2 minus 7. Remember, subtracting can be rewritten as adding a negative. This idea of rewriting a subtraction to adding a negative, going back and forth, is very important in mathematics. You will use this a lot as you continue on in algebra and in other science classes. So with our rounding, we have negative 2 plus negative 7, so our estimate is negative 9. Our answer should be around negative 9. The most important thing is to realize your answer is negative. Now if we find the exact answer, we're going to line up the decimal places again. We're basically going to ignore the sign at first because since they're both negative, we're just simply going to add them. Notice again I added in 2 zeros here after 7.3. That's so that all my decimal places have something lined up with them. We add and we get 9.161. 1 plus 0 is 1, 6 plus 0 is 6, 8 plus 3 is 11, so we had to carry it. 1 plus 1 plus 7 is 9. So here is our exact value of our answer, but we still have to deal with the signs. Since both the numbers were negative, our answer will be negative. So our exact answer is negative 9.161. Another example. Find the sum of 5.897 plus 4.632 plus 12.174. Let's estimate first. We have 6 plus 5 plus 12, or 6 plus 5 plus 10. I'm okay with either. We come up to 23, or if you just used 10, you would have 21. The big point here is that our answer is around 20. Write the numbers with the decimal places all lined up, and all of the place values then line up as well. We're going to add, and that has a lot of carrying in this case. Our final answer is 22.703. And again, notice how the decimal just stayed right where it was. Find the sum of 7.3 plus 0.85. If we estimate, we're adding 7 plus 1, which is 8. This explains a little bit more about why it's okay to just add zeros onto the end of a number. If we write 7.30 as a fraction, it's 7 and 30 over 100. If we write 7.3, as a mixed number. If we write 7.3 as a mixed number, we have 7 and 3/10. Notice 30 over 100 and 3/10 is the same fraction. One is just in simplified form. So basically 7.3 is simplified, 7.30 is not simplified. Again, in a science class, when you're working with significant digits, 7.30 would be considered more accurate. You are telling the reader that you know that the answer is exactly 0.30, that there is 0 in the hundredths place. Here you're less accurate. You know up to the tenths place, but you don't know anything about the hundredths place. When you're adding and subtracting decimals, it is perfectly acceptable to put in those extra zeros to keep your decimal points all lined up. Line up the decimal point, get all our place values in line, we have that extra 0 written in, and we get 8.15. So our final answer is 8.15, which is close to our estimate of 8. Find the sum of 6.42 plus 9 plus 2.576. First, let's estimate. We're going to have 6 plus 9 plus 3, which is going to be about 18. Here we're going to line up the decimal places. There's a space here because this took 2 lines, but we added 3 zeros after the 9, and notice how we added a decimal point. When you're working with whole numbers and decimals, there's always a decimal point right after the ones place. Again, if you just remember that your goal is to line up place values, 9 is in the ones place, that has to be lined up with the 6 and the 2 because they're also in the ones place. And then everything after that will just be zeros. Add up like normal, and our decimals in the same spot, so our answer is 17.996, which is extremely close to our estimate. Find the difference of 28.93 and 15.82. That's basically telling us to subtract. If we estimate, we have 30 minus 20, which is around 10. Again, line up our decimals, subtract like normal. In this case, no regrouping is required. We can just subtract straight out. We get 1311. The decimal stays right where it was, so our final answer is 13.11, which is close to our estimate of 10. Another example. Find 146.35 minus 58.98. We have 100 minus 60, which is about 40. We're going to need to regroup in this problem. Notice the 146.35 is on the top and the 58.98 is on the bottom. We have our decimals lined up. In order to do this, I'd have to do 5 minus 8, and I can't do that, so I have to regroup. The 3 becomes a 2, and we bring a 1 over here and we get 15. 15 minus 8 is 7. So now we have 2 minus 9. We can't do that, so we steal from the 6. This becomes a 12 minus 9 is 3. Since we stole from the 6, it was a 5. We can't do 5 minus 8, so we have to steal some more. 4 becomes a 3, and this becomes a 15. 15 minus 8 is 7. Now we have a 3, but we can't do 3 minus 5, so we have to steal some more. We have 13 minus 5 is 8, and since we stole from this one, it was just 0, and it's not there. Again, the decimals all lined up, and our answer is 87.37. Notice in this case it's very different from our estimate, and that is okay. Sometimes your estimate will be very off. The most important thing, however, is it should generally be in the same place value. This was in the tens, and this is in the tens, so we're probably fine. Had we got an answer in the hundreds place or the ones place, that's a bigger sign that something went wrong. Subtract 16.5 from 28.362. The 28.362 rounds to 30, the 16.5 rounds to 20. A quick note, we're subtracting 16.5 from this, so subtracting that 16.5, which in this case rounds to 20, is happening second. Our answer should be around 10. So here we're doing the 28.362 and we're subtracting 16.5 from it. We are filling in those 2 zeros so that we have all our decimal places lined up. Subtract and we get 11.862, which is close to our estimate of 10. Find a number that is 5.83 less than 12. So in this case, we're basically doing 10 minus 6. We're wanting a number that is about 6 less than 10, which is 4. So we're doing 12 minus 5.83. Again, notice 12 has a decimal place after the ones place. Add that in and the two zeros so everything lines up. We're going to have to do some regrouping or stealing. The 12 becomes a 1. This was a 10. We stole from that. It became a 9, and this is a 10. We get 6.17, which is close to our estimate of 4. Remember, when you're adding and subtracting sign numbers, that when the sign is the same, whether both positive or both negative, you just add the absolute values and keep the sign. When you're adding or subtracting two numbers with unlike signs, so signs that are different, you subtract the smaller absolute value from the larger absolute value, and you use the sign of the larger absolute value. So let's find the sum of negative 3.7 plus negative 16. Both the addends are negative, so the sum will be negative. If we estimate, we're going to have a negative 4 plus a negative 20. Our answer should be around negative 24. We're going to add the absolute values, again lining up the decimal places, add the decimal point after the ones place if needed, add zeros if needed, and we get 19.7. Since they were both negative, our answer will be negative. So our estimate was negative 24, our exact answer is negative 19.7, which is pretty accurate. Find the sum of negative 5.23 plus 0.792. In this case, both the addends have different signs, so we're going to subtract the value and keep the sign of the larger number. If we estimate, we have negative 5 plus 1, which is negative 4. The exact answer, we're going to subtract this smaller absolute value from the larger, and we wind up with 4.438. Since the larger value was negative, our answer is going to be negative. So our final answer is negative 4.438. Find the difference 4.3 minus 12.73. So this is basically 4 minus 10, which is negative 6. Remember, when you subtract a number, you can rewrite it as adding a negative. This relationship, this idea of going back and forth between a subtraction and adding a negative, is again very critical in your math classes. You need to understand and be comfortable with this relationship right here. Since the 12.73 is the larger value and it is negative, our answer will be negative. Since they're different signs, we have a positive and a negative, we're going to subtract. So 12.73 minus 4.30 is 8.43. Since the larger value was negative, our answer is negative. So our final answer is negative 8.43, which is fairly close to our estimate of negative 6. Find the difference negative 3.65 minus a negative 4.8. So this is negative about, if we estimate, negative 4 minus negative 5. Remember, when you're subtracting a negative, you're really adding a positive, so our estimate should be around 1. So again, subtracting a negative is the same as adding a positive. Since we have different signs, a negative and a positive, we're going to subtract, but the larger absolute value is positive, so our final answer will be positive. We subtract and we get 1.15. Since the larger value is positive, our answer is positive, so our final answer is 1.15, which is close to our estimate of 1. Last example. Find the difference 14.2 minus parenthesis 1.69 plus 0.48. We're going to follow our order of operations, which says to work within the parentheses first. If we add 1.69 plus 0.48, we get 2.7. So we have 14.2 minus 2.7. If you need to, you can think of this as adding the opposite. Both of these ways result in the same answer, so it's whatever way it makes more sense to your brain. We're going to subtract, and we wind up with 12.03. That concludes section 5.3. Your next step is to complete the worksheet for section 5.3, then either check the key in D2L or come to class and we will go over it, and then complete the online homework for section 5.3 through My Math Lab.